The humid air of the Pacific jungle hangs heavy over the entrenched positions of the United States Marines on the island of Guadalcanal. It is August in the year 1942, and the darkness is absolute save for the occasional flare illuminating the terrified faces of young men. In the distance, the terrifying sound of a banzai charge begins to rise above the rustling palm fronds as the enemy prepares to overrun the perimeter. These soldiers grip their weapons with white-knuckled intensity as the enemy emerges from the dense undergrowth in a fanatical wave. The standard-issue bolt-action rifles used by most nations would spell doom for these defenders facing such overwhelming numbers in close quarters. A soldier needs to fire rapidly and accurately without breaking his sight picture to survive this onslaught. The outcome of this skirmish, and indeed the entire campaign, rests on the ability to deliver superior firepower. For decades, the bolt-action rifle had reigned supreme on the battlefields of the world, requiring a manual cycling of the action between every single shot. This mechanism forced a soldier to lower his weapon and lose his target acquisition with every pull of the trigger, which drastically reduced the volume of fire. In a high-stakes environment where milliseconds determine who lives and who dies, the bolt action was a dangerous liability against a rushing horde. The United States military recognized this fatal flaw years before the outbreak of hostilities and sought a solution that would revolutionize infantry warfare. They needed a weapon that could reload itself instantly, using the energy of the fired round to chamber the next cartridge. This concept of a semi-automatic service rifle was considered a pipe dream by many conservative military leaders. Into this desperate void stepped a rugged and reliable masterpiece of engineering that would become the envy of every army in World War II. The M1 Garand rifle offered the American infantryman the ability to fire 8 rounds as fast as he could pull the trigger without moving his hands. This advantage in rate of fire meant that a single squad of American riflemen could pin down a much larger enemy force equipped with bolt-action weapons. It was a technological leap that shifted the balance of power in every engagement from the hedgerows of Normandy to the black sands of Iwo Jima. But this weapon did not appear out of thin air. It was the result of decades of obsessive work by one brilliant man. The journey of this rifle is a story of perseverance against bureaucratic resistance and mechanical failure. Who was the mastermind behind this wooden and steel legend that General George Patton would later call the greatest battle implement ever devised? The answer lies with a humble immigrant named John Cantius Garand, who was born in Quebec, Canada, and moved to the United States as a child. He was a natural tinkerer and a machinist prodigy who found himself working at the prestigious Springfield Armory in Massachusetts. John Garand was not a soldier, but he understood the needs of the soldier better than the generals who sat in comfortable offices. His life became consumed by a singular question that haunted the Ordnance Department for 20 years. Could a rifle be built that was light enough for a soldier to carry, yet strong enough to handle the powerful .30-06 cartridge? The road to the final design was paved with failures and political battles that almost killed the project before it could ever reach the production line. There were fierce debates over the caliber of the ammunition and the specific mechanism used to cycle the action. At one point, the entire project was nearly scrapped in favor of a smaller caliber round that would have rendered the millions of rounds of existing ammunition useless. It took the direct intervention of the Chief of Staff of the United States Army to save the heavier caliber and secure the future of the M1. The story of the M1 Garand is not just about steel and gunpowder, but about the vision of one man who armed the free world. It is the story of how the United States became the only nation to equip its troops with a semi-automatic rifle as standard issue. John Cantius Garand was born into a large family in Saint-Remy, Quebec in the year 1888, and his early life was defined by tragedy and hard work. His mother died when he was only a young boy, and his father moved the family to Connecticut to find work in the textile mills. John started working in a cotton mill at the tender age of 11, where he developed an intuitive understanding of complex machinery. He spent his spare time shooting at shooting galleries, where his fascination with firearms began to take root in his inventive mind. By the time he was a young man, he was already designing his own motorcycles and tools, showing a genius for mechanical efficiency. This background in practical machining would prove crucial when he later tackled the problem of the semi-automatic rifle. During the chaos of World War I, John Garand submitted a design for a light machine gun that caught the attention of the United States Navy. Although the war ended before his design could be produced, his obvious talent led to a position at the Springfield Armory in 1919. The Springfield Armory was the primary center for the manufacture of United States military firearms, and it was here that Garand would spend the next 3 decades. He was tasked with the seemingly impossible goal of creating a self-loading rifle that weighed less than 10 pounds and could survive the rigors of combat. The existing prototypes from other designers were too heavy or too fragile, or simply too dangerous for the average soldier to operate. Garand approached the problem with the mind of a machinist, focusing on simplicity and ease of manufacture. The early 1920s were a time of experimentation and frustration, as Garand tested various mechanisms to actuate the reloading cycle. His first major attempt used a primer actuation system, where the backward movement of the primer in the cartridge case unlocked the bolt. This system worked well with certain ammunition, but proved unreliable when military powder specifications were changed without warning. A military rifle must function perfectly with every batch of ammunition, regardless of slight variations in pressure or consistency. Realizing that primer actuation was a dead end, Garand pivoted his attention to gas operation, which uses the expanding gases of the fired bullet. This decision marked a turning point in the development of the rifle, but the challenges were far from over. Gas operation involves tapping a small amount of high-pressure gas from the barrel to drive a piston that cycles the action. The initial designs utilized a gas trap at the muzzle, which caught the gas after the bullet had left the barrel. This gas trap system was mechanically sound, but it added weight to the end of the barrel and was prone to collecting carbon buildup. Soldiers in the field would later find that the gas trap could become loose or misaligned, which would turn the semi-automatic rifle into a manual one. Garand eventually redesigned the system to use a simple gas port drilled directly into the barrel, which was much more robust. This change to the gas port configuration was one of the final pieces of the puzzle that created the legendary reliability of the M1. While Garand was perfecting the mechanics of the rifle, a fierce debate was raging within the Ordnance Department regarding the ammunition caliber. Many experts believed that the standard .30-06 cartridge was too powerful for a shoulder-fired semi-automatic weapon. They argued that the recoil would be uncontrollable and that the heat generated would cause the weapon to overheat rapidly. A faction led by John Pedersen advocated for a smaller .27-6 caliber round that allowed for a lighter rifle and more ammunition capacity. Garand dutifully designed a version of his rifle for this smaller cartridge, and it performed exceptionally well in trials. For a brief moment, it seemed that the United States military would abandon the .30-06 entirely in favor of the new intermediate round. The debate came to a sudden halt in 1932 when General Douglas MacArthur, who was then the Army Chief of Staff, intervened personally. MacArthur looked at the vast stockpiles of .30-06 ammunition left over from World War I and the cost of retooling the entire logistical chain. He declared that the new rifle must be chambered in the existing service cartridge, or there would be no new rifle at all. This decision forced Garand to return to his original design and strengthen the receiver to handle the full power of the .30-06. While controversial at the time, this decision proved to be a stroke of strategic genius when war finally broke out. It ensured that machine guns and rifles could share the same ammunition, which simplified supply lines immensely. After years of grueling tests and modifications, the rifle was officially adopted on January 9, 1936, as the United States Rifle Caliber .30 M1. It was the first semi-automatic rifle to be adopted as the standard infantry weapon by a major military power. However, adoption on paper was a very different thing from mass production in the factory and getting them into the hands of soldiers. The Springfield Armory had to design entirely new machinery and tooling to produce the complex receiver and operating rod of the Garand. Critics in Congress and the media called the rifle a waste of money and claimed it would jam constantly in the field. These doubts persisted right up until the moment the first shots were fired in anger. The production ramp-up was agonizingly slow during the late 1930s as the United States clung to a policy of isolationism. By 1940, the Army still did not have enough M1 rifles to equip its expanding forces, and many units trained with old bolt-action Springfields. The complexity of the Garand meant that it required precise machining and high-quality steel, which limited the speed of manufacture. As the war clouds gathered over Europe and Asia, the urgency to produce the weapon increased dramatically. The government eventually contracted the Winchester Repeating Arms Company to supplement the production at Springfield Armory. This partnership was crucial in meeting the astronomical demand that would soon be placed upon American industry. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, shattered American isolationism and kicked the industrial machine into high gear. Suddenly, the constraints on budget and resources vanished, and the priority was to arm millions of young men as quickly as possible. The M1 Garand became a symbol of American resolve and industrial might, as factories ran 24 hours a day. Women entered the workforce in droves to operate the machines that cut and shaped the walnut stocks and steel receivers. The production numbers soared from thousands to hundreds of thousands and eventually into the millions. By the end of the war, Springfield Armory and Winchester had produced over 4 million M1 Garand rifles. For the average American GI, receiving the M1 Garand was a moment of mixed emotions involving awe and intimidation. The rifle was heavy, weighing nearly 10 pounds when fully loaded, and it required a strict maintenance routine. Training manuals emphasized the importance of keeping the gas system clean and lubricating the operating rod to prevent malfunctions. Soldiers learned the manual of arms until they could strip and reassemble the rifle blindfolded in a muddy foxhole. They learned to respect the power of the operating rod spring, which could snap the bolt shut on a finger with bone-crushing force. This painful lesson was known as Garand Thumb, and it became a badge of honor among new recruits. The feeding mechanism of the M1 Garand was unique and utilized an end block clip that held 8 rounds of ammunition. Unlike other rifles where rounds were loaded individually or via stripper clip, the entire packet was shoved into the open receiver. When the last round was fired, the empty clip was automatically ejected with a distinctive metallic ping sound. This feature allowed for incredibly fast reloading, as a soldier could simply jam a new clip in and keep firing. The 8-round capacity gave the American soldier a significant advantage over the 5-round capacity of German and Japanese rifles. This continuous stream of fire allowed American squads to suppress enemy positions and maneuver with aggressive speed. In the dense jungles of the Pacific Theater, the M1 Garand proved its worth almost immediately against the Imperial Japanese Army. Japanese tactics often relied on stealth and surprise, followed by massed bayonet charges meant to terrify and overwhelm the enemy. Against bolt-action rifles, these tactics had often been successful in China and the early colonial campaigns. However, against a line of Marines armed with M1 Garands, a banzai charge was essentially a suicide mission. The ability to fire 8 rounds without breaking position meant that the Japanese waves were cut down before they could reach American lines. The stopping power of the .30-06 round could penetrate the thick jungle cover that the enemy used for concealment. The environmental conditions in the Pacific were a nightmare for any mechanical device with high humidity and saltwater and abrasive sand. The M1 Garand proved to be surprisingly resilient in these harsh conditions, provided it was kept reasonably clean. The wood stocks would swell in the dampness, and the metal would rust overnight if not oiled constantly. Soldiers learned to use condoms to cover the muzzle of the rifle to keep out water and sand during beach landings. Despite the abuse, the Garand kept firing when it mattered most, earning the trust of the Marines and soldiers. It was in these bloody island campaigns that the legend of the rifle was truly forged in fire. On the other side of the world, in the European theater, the M1 Garand faced a different set of challenges against the German Wehrmacht. The German army was highly disciplined and equipped with excellent bolt-action Mauser rifles and terrifying machine guns. In the hedgerows of Normandy, the fighting was close and brutal, often taking place at ranges of less than 100 yards. The semi-automatic fire of the Garand allowed American infantry to win fire superiority in these confused engagements. An American squad could put more lead in the air than a comparable German squad unless the Germans brought a machine gun to bear. This volume of fire allowed the Americans to advance even when outnumbered locally. The German soldiers who faced the M1 Garand were often shocked by the intensity of the fire coming from American positions. They initially assumed that every American squad was equipped with multiple machine guns due to the rate of fire. Captured M1 rifles were highly prized by German troops who recognized the superiority of the semi-automatic system. The Germans attempted to field their own semi-automatic rifles like the Jupiler 43, but they never achieved the same reliability or production numbers. The M1 remained the undisputed king of the infantry rifles throughout the liberation of France and the drive into Germany. It was the constant companion of the GI through the freezing mud of the Battle of the Bulge. A persistent myth surrounding the M1 Garand is the idea that the ping of the ejecting clip got soldiers killed. The theory goes that the enemy would wait to hear the ping and then charge knowing the American soldier was empty. In reality, the chaos of the battlefield was so deafening that hearing a small metallic ping was nearly impossible. Furthermore, soldiers rarely fought alone, and while one man was reloading, his squad mates were still firing. Some veterans even reported throwing empty clips against rocks to simulate the sound and bait the enemy into exposing themselves. While the story makes for good drama, there is little historical evidence to suggest it was a significant tactical liability. The versatility of the M1 Garand extended beyond simple rifle fire with the addition of the M7 grenade launcher attachment. This device attached to the muzzle and allowed the soldier to launch fragmentation or anti-tank grenades using a special blank cartridge. This gave the infantry squad a pocket artillery capability that could knock out machine gun nests or light vehicles. The rifle could also be fitted with a bayonet, which was still considered an essential tool for close quarters combat and prisoner control. These accessories made the M1 a complete weapon system capable of handling a wide variety of combat scenarios. The adaptability of the platform endeared it to commanders who needed flexible solutions on the battlefield. Sniper variants of the M1 Garand, known as the M1C and M1D, were developed to provide designated marksmen with rapid-fire capability. These versions featured a scope mounted offset to the left of the receiver to allow the clip to be loaded and ejected. While they were not as precise as the bolt-action Springfield sniper rifles, they offered a faster follow-up shot. These sniper variants saw limited service in World War II, but would go on to play a larger role in the Korean War. They represented the evolution of the sniper doctrine from a slow, deliberate hunter to a more dynamic combat support role. The M1 proved that a semi-automatic rifle could still be accurate enough for precision work. The maintenance of the M1 Garand was a daily ritual that bonded the soldier to his weapon in a very personal way. The rifle disassembled into major groups without the need for tools, which was a brilliant design feature for field stripping. A soldier could use the tip of a bullet to push out the trigger housing pin and separate the stock from the action. Cleaning the bore and the gas cylinder was essential to prevent corrosion from the corrosive primers used in wartime ammunition. If the gas port became clogged, the rifle would fail to cycle and become a straight pull bolt action. This intimate knowledge of the weapon created a confidence that the rifle would function when the chips were down. By the time the war ended in 1945, the M1 Garand had firmly established itself as the finest service rifle of the conflict. It had served in every theater of operation from the deserts of North Africa to the frozen forests of the Ardennes. General George Patton famously praised it in a letter to the Springfield Armory, calling it the greatest battle implement ever devised. This high praise was not merely hyperbole, but a reflection of the tactical advantage the rifle provided to the American Army. It had proven that a complex semi-automatic mechanism could be rugged enough for the brutality of global war. The M1 Garand had helped to liberate nations and destroy tyranny. Following the surrender of Germany and Japan, the United States military began to downsize, but the M1 Garand remained the standard service rifle. Millions of rifles were refurbished and placed into storage or distributed to allies around the world. The M1 would see combat again just 5 years later, when the Korean War broke out in 1950. In the bitter cold of the Korean peninsula, the Garand once again proved its reliability and lethality against waves of attackers. The lubrication had to be stripped to prevent freezing, but the rifle kept firing when other weapons failed. It was the trusted companion of a new generation of soldiers fighting to stop the spread of communism. During the Korean War, the limitations of the 8-round en bloc clip and the lack of a detachable magazine became more apparent. The enemy was fielding weapons with larger magazine capacities, and the desire for a select fire rifle grew. Experiments began to modify the M1 to accept a 20-round box magazine and to fire in fully automatic mode. These experiments would eventually lead to the development of the M14 rifle, which was essentially an improved M1 Garand. The M14 would replace the Garand in the late 1950s, marking the end of the M1's tenure as the primary service rifle. However, the DNA of John Garand's design lived on in the operating system of the new weapon. The legacy of the M1 Garand extends far beyond its military service and into the fabric of American civilian culture and history. Through the civilian marksmanship program, hundreds of thousands of surplus M1 rifles have been sold to qualified American citizens. These rifles are cherished by collectors and competitive shooters who appreciate the history and craftsmanship of the weapon. Holding an M1 Garand is like holding a piece of living history, a tangible connection to the generation that fought World War II. The heavy walnut stock and the parkerized steel speak of a time when industrial durability was paramount. It remains a popular rifle for vintage military rifle matches across the country. The genius of John Garand lies in his ability to create a mechanism that was both revolutionary and incredibly robust. He gave the rights to his patents to the United States government and never received a royalty for the millions of rifles produced. He lived a modest life and retired from the Springfield Armory in 1953, having served his country through his engineering. His contribution to the Allied victory is incalculable, as his rifle gave the individual soldier a fighting chance against terrible odds. The M1 Garand stands as a monument to American ingenuity and the arsenal of democracy. It is a testament to the idea that a single mechanical innovation can change the course of history. Today, the M1 Garand is revered not just as a weapon of war, but as a symbol of liberation and the defense of freedom. Museums around the world display the rifle as an icon of the 20th century, and its distinctive silhouette is instantly recognizable. The sound of the ping has become a legendary audio signature in movies and video games, keeping the memory of the rifle alive. For the veterans who carried it, the M1 was more than a machine, it was a lifeline that brought them home. It was the wooden and steel partner that stood between them and the enemy in the darkest hours of their lives. The rifle earned its place in history through blood and mud and reliable service. As we look back on the history of warfare, few individual weapons have had such a profound impact on the tactics and outcome of a conflict. The transition from bolt action to semi-automatic fire was a paradigm shift that defined the modern infantryman. The M1 Garand led this charge and set the standard by which all future battle rifles would be judged. It bridged the gap between the old world of manual repeaters and the modern world of assault rifles. Its service life spanned decades, and its influence is still felt in the design of gas-operated firearms today. The greatest battle implement ever devised truly lived up to its name. In the quiet halls of the Springfield Armory National Historic Site, visitors can see the evolution of the rifle from prototype to final production. They can see the tools and the jigs that were used to manufacture the millions of components required for the war effort. It serves as a reminder of the massive industrial mobilization that was required to defeat the Axis powers. The M1 Garand is the centerpiece of this story, a physical manifestation of national will and engineering prowess. It reminds us that victory is often forged in the workshops and factories, long before the first shot is fired. The rifle is a silent witness to the sacrifice of a generation. The story of the M1 Garand is also a reminder of the importance of foresight and preparedness in military procurement. The decision to develop a semi-automatic rifle in the 1920s, when peace seemed assured, was a bold and necessary gamble. Without that head start, the United States would have entered World War II with an inferior weapon. The delays and the teething problems were overcome just in time to arm the troops for the critical battles of 1942. It teaches us that technological superiority is not guaranteed, but must be actively pursued and nurtured. The M1 Garand was the right weapon at the right time for the right cause. As the sun sets on the generation that wielded this weapon, the M1 Garand remains a bridge to their memory and their deeds. When a shooter at the range loads a clip and hears that bolt slam home, they are experiencing the same sensation as a GI in 1944. The recoil impulse and the smell of the powder and the final ping are sensory links to the past. It ensures that the story of the greatest generation is not just read in books, but felt in the hands. The M1 Garand is more than a rifle, it is a legacy of courage and freedom, carved in walnut and steel. It will continue to speak with a loud voice for generations to come.